So Doug Flynn joins us now. His Yankees also won last night, but they still have to win another game, right? So
they do.
Yeah. What about this? What's the read on the CPI in terms of, it wasn't terrible. I mean, inflation kept trending lower, but I know the expectation was maybe it would come up down a little bit more, right?
That was the expectation, but it is the lowest point in 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's, you're going to hear that a bit from the Harris campaign, that they've got the lowest inflation print on the CPI, and you're also going to hear from the Trump side that things like eggs are still up 40% year over year. So you have those things mixed in there, but the overall number that we used was definitely that low point. Now the core CPI actually went up from a month ago, so that's not going to make as much news, and that's the number that the Fed really looks at. And so now things are swirling around that maybe the Fed isn't going to be so aggressive in its cutting next month. But this is the last part of data we're going to get before the election.
Well,
so
Trump thinks they should. Well, of course, I don't know if he would think the same if he was president at the time. But now he was at the Detroit Economic Club today. He thinks they're cutting too fast, or they're bringing things down too fast. Here's Donald Trump earlier today.
The fact is that the Federal Reserve brought the interest rates down a little too quickly. It was too big a cut, and everyone knows that was a political maneuver that they tried to do before the election, but they did the wrong thing. It was totally a political decision, and inflation has started to rise.
No, anyway, so that was subdued, by the way. But as you say, the inflation rate, as we say, has been cooling off. Inflation, by definition, is rising prices. So if there's any inflation, their prices would be rising. But that, what about the Fed point?
Yeah, I mean, the Fed is probably going to, gone is another half a point that everyone kept expecting after last month's half a point. So now there's some in the camp that are saying a quarter is enough. And some are even saying maybe they need to skip this next month's reduction. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm in the camp that they're going to continue on with a quarter of a point each time because rates are still too low. But the labor numbers are suspect now also, and that's what everything is turning to. Inflation is definitely getting under control, and now we're worried about the Labor Department because you're not getting consistent numbers from there at all.
So that's the whole thing. The Federal Reserve has this dual mandate, and that's part of it. It's the jobs and it's the price stability, the interest rates, right? So Jobless claims 14-month high, right? I think, so a little over a year since we've had numbers like this. So that's your point on the labor market.
Exactly.
That's not great.
So no, that's not. But this comes after last week's data about new jobs being gangbusters. So that's the point. You're getting sort of mixed data on the labor area, and that's why it's not as clear cut as it would be if you were getting very weakening labor and inflation very high. So that's a different story than what we have going on right now. So I think it's going to be more of just this kind of choppy news data. It doesn't go in a straight line, and the Fed's going to continue on lowering rates slowly as it needs to do to keep things. And hopefully they can do that soft landing that we've spoken about.
Well, yeah, right. It's always difficult. But these weekly numbers, right, I would think they're impacted. This is where you do see hurricane impacts, right? So like we already had Helene, and that would have impacted that number, I would think. And then I think it did. And then this number going forward would maybe be impacted by Milton. I don't know. But the larger point, we'll make this the final point, we probably won't get a clear look at the kind of the underlying economy and how things are before the election, because that type of data is going to be, influenced by the hurricanes.
That's right. And a lot of that's going to come out next month after the election. And it's the same thing when it comes to CPI and inflation, because oil is up about 15% from a month ago. Right. That isn't going to hit people's wallet until this month and be affected next month. So you could have a tick up in inflation. All this is very, very choppy right now with the season that we're in. But I think the Fed's going to take the longer view and hopefully continue to do the right thing. And so here we go into the election.
Here we go. Thank you, Doug. As always, 4 o'clock in New York.